Good evening. It's now 6 p.m. and the February 4th meeting of the Dublin San Ramon Services District Board of Directors is called to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Johnson?
Here.
Director Von Heater-Leopold?
Here.
Director Govinda Rao?
Here.
Vice President Halkett?
I'm here.
President Goel?
Present. Thank you. Item 4, we're moving on to special announcements and activities.
No special announcements this evening.
Thank you. Item 5, public comment. At this time, those in the audience are encouraged to address the board on any items of interest that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and not already included in tonight's agenda. Comments should not exceed 5 minutes. Are there any speakers from the public? Seeing none. Moving on to item 6, agenda management.
No recommended changes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, consent calendar. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless requested by a member of the board or public prior to the time the board votes on adoption of the motion. Is there a motion to approve the items for the consent calendar?
Also move.
I'll second.
I got a move by Director Von Heater-Leopold and a second by Director Govinda Rao. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimous. Moving on to item 8, board business. Item 8A, receive a presentation on AVA Community Energy Service Plans. Staff.
Good evening, President Goel, members of the board. Tonight's agenda includes 3 energy-related items. Before I turn it over to staff to review these items for the board, I wanted to provide a few general remarks on the district's focus on energy. Last February, the board adopted an energy policy which provides guidance for improving long-term energy efficiency and reliability and stabilizing long-term energy costs. Energy represents a significant portion of the district's total operating expenses. For fiscal year 2025, DSRSD has budgeted approximately $5 million for energy costs, which accounts for 5% of the district's total operating expenses. This percentage increases to 15% if labor and Zone 7 water purchases are excluded. Energy also represents a significant operating cost for our 2 JPAs, DERWA and LAVMA. For DERWA, energy represents about 25% of DERWA's total operating expenses. And for LAVMA, energy can range and represent anywhere from 30 to 50% of LAVMA's operating expenses, depending on the type of hydrologic year and how wet it is. This evening, staff will be providing the board with updates on 3 energy-related efforts designed to support the goals of the energy policy. Direction that staff receives from the board this evening will be incorporated into the proposed operating and capital budgets that staff is currently preparing and will be presented and reviewed with the board in May and considered for adoption in June. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Gill, Operations Director, Steve Delight, Engineering Services Director, and Jason Ching, Senior Engineer and Project Manager for the Energy Master Plan, to provide this evening's presentations.
Good evening, President Goel and members of the board. I'm Dan Gill, DSRSD's Operations Director. Last year, LAVMA member agencies asked about the potential for LAVMA to purchase power from AVA Community Energy. Until recently, the wastewater treatment plant and the LAVMA pumping plant electrical accounts were not eligible. However, after some diligent research, staff found that this has changed. Given the interest from our JPA partners with purchasing energy from a community choice aggregation, or CCA, staff wanted to provide some general information on CCAs and get the board's concurrence on direction to enroll our remaining PG&E accounts in AVA's Bright Choice energy service plan. So These are the discussion topics for my presentation. I'll go over real quick what community choice aggregation is. Then I'll talk about AVA Community Energy, which is the CCA for Alameda County and the East Bay. We'll go over the plans and rates, and then I'll discuss next steps. So community choice aggregation is a California program that allows local governments to procure cleaner power for their residents, customers, and businesses while still receiving transmission and distribution services from their existing providers. CCAs provide communities with control over their energy sources. They lower costs by aggregating electrical demands. They create revenue for local green energy projects. And when PG&E has been the only game in town, they offer choice. Just so you know, when you do receive a bill from a CCA, it looks just like a PG&E bill. Nothing has changed. PG&E still manages the transmission. You'll still go to PG&E for any customer issues, but the power will come from the CCA, and in this case, AVA Community Energy. So AVA was originally formed in 2018 as East Bay Community Energy. It currently serves 1.7 million residents and commercial customers of Alameda County, to include the city of Tracy. It provides electrical generation with focus on sustainability, with the goal to purchase 100% from clean sources by the year 2030. So the plans, these are the plans that AVA offers. The Renewable 100 plan is 100% solar and wind energy, but it's priced a little bit, a quarter of a cent per kilowatt hour above PG&E's rates. The Bright Choice, which is AVA's basic plan, is about 55% renewable energy and is priced 5% below PG&E rates. And by comparison, PG&E's plan is 33% eligible renewable energy. And you can see on the bottom there what the colors represent for each of those plans. Currently, the district manages 58 electrical services, including 14 accounts on behalf of LAVMA. In 2021, the district opted almost all electrical services in Alameda County to AVA's Bright Choice plan. The remaining 3 service accounts, the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant and 2 accounts at the LAVMA Export Pumping Plant, are now eligible to be added to AVA's Bright Choice plan. As for savings, we took a look at fiscal year 24 energy expenses, and for the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant, we spent approximately $1.5 million on energy. And if we applied the 5% savings, we would have saved approximately $75,000. Now, this cost savings would be shared between DERWA agencies because DERWA takes up the majority of the power consumed at the wastewater treatment plant because of the cogen system. And for LAVMA, we spent approximately $2 million for fiscal year 24. Approximate savings would be $100,000 after applying the 5% savings. And this cost would be shared between LAVMA agencies. And those agencies are charged for the proportion of wastewater that we pump over the hill. So as a recommendation, in line with the district's energy policy, which states in the operation of DSRSD facilities, promote and adopt cost-effective operational practices, programs, and initiatives to manage energy costs and minimize impacts to the environment. Staff recommends that the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant switch over to the Bright Choice plant, and we also recommend the same for the 2 LAVMA services. And I can questions. Have any?
Any questions? Start on this side.
Questions, or are we going to comments or
Comments,
Okay.
questions?
Well, first of all, thanks, Dan, for a nice presentation. You know, when I look at this, you know, it appears like it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, we're going to save 5%. I guess my question I'd ask, and this is no way to be critical or criticize anything, but if this started in 2018, why didn't we start this earlier?
So originally, Ava Community Energy focused on residential customers and small businesses because of the size of the service. And over time, as they were able to properly manage the amount of energy that they had, then they added the bigger services. So both of the services that we want to add are 21,000 volts. So they were added later.
So this wouldn't have been available
This
available
was
to
not
us
available in
in earlier
2018.
years. Okay. All right. So that's okay. Thank you. I think that answers my question.
Well,
Correct. It was not available when we switched over the accounts in 2021. And then I'll just add to what Dan was saying. The other is net metering that we do at the wastewater treatment plant, and we were not able to accommodate that at that point as well because we generate our own energy as well. So now the plan has changed, and we've worked pretty closely with Ava to be able to be at this point where we can enroll these services.
So they can account for net metering, and because I think MCE is able to do that. So and I think this is their sort of their sister right company in the Contra Costa County. Okay, great, thank you.
and if it helps, I was part of that board,
Okay,
and a lot
is that
of
why it took
was-
this long? I'm just kidding. I'm just joking with you. Sorry, we're on record here.
Yeah, we're on camera.
Hey, we
So,
create some humor for the public.
Just to share, I was part of that board, and a lot of it had to do with standing up the organization,
Sure.
getting things in motion, and then the procurement side of it as well.
Got
So
it.
there was a lot of sequences. It's just in 2018, it wasn't fully available for everything.
Right, and then we probably had COVID as well. That I'm sure delayed things. Yeah, great, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Comment.
Okay, go ahead.
So, if the goal is to have 100% clean sources by 2030, and the renewable 100 is above PG&E rates, how long are we anticipating this cost savings? Sounds like ultimately we'll pay more for the betterment, of course, of the environment. But from a budgeting standpoint, I'm just curious if there's any insight as to
Like
the
if the
long-term
plans will change.
ramifications of it.
There is not. I mean, they're still working on, as we talked about, they aggregate and they have higher purchasing power by aggregating. But, it is uncertain how long this savings will last.
I mean, as long as we have our eyes wide open about it, I mean, it's a feel-good program. Realistically, it's not. And I would prefer that be the reason that we say we're going to do it versus we're going to save a few nickels and dimes because we won't be able to justify that decision in a few years.
However, is it fair to say that this will be constantly monitored, and just like any other service provider, we can reevaluate and choose a different path at a later time?
So in your mind, cost savings is the driver.
Well,
So
you
you
could go with
would-
cost savings and the clean energy both. And then if something were to change at a later time, revisit it.
Okay.
But kind of add on to that comment there. So we're looking at bright choice,
Right.
and I think to Anne Marie's, let's say if we went to the renewable 100 option, I mean obviously, so I guess the question you're asking was, or at least how I think it is cost. The cost driver was what we're focused on, but if we're looking at saying let's be better stewards of the environment, then renewable 100 would probably be a better option. And so I guess my question also on top of that is, it says it's a quarter cent per kilowatt increase compared to the PG&E rates. So what would that really look like if we did go? What would the cost look like if we went with the renewable 100 option? Do we have those numbers?
Yes. So for the wastewater treatment plant, if we went with the renewable 100 plan, it would be an increase of $10,000. It wouldn't, and for llama, it would be an increase of $22,000 as opposed to the savings.
Sure.
One way that staff has been looking at this is that, as you're going to hear in the next presentation, the district has a whole host of different energy projects that we are going to be investing in. What AVA does is they take that savings and they invest locally in more greener supply sources. What we view is we're taking that savings and we're going to invest in our own energy projects. So over time, we have both what we're purchasing, but we have cogen and other projects that we're also looking at in terms of renewable sources.
I guess my question then is, would the 175,000 that we're gaining from this, is that greater than the benefit we would have to the environment? And I think that's the question that we need to address, right? Because I don't know the answer to that without doing some more digging and research. So that's something I'd want to look into.
And we can certainly look at that. The other, what I would also add is that we can change plans at any time.
Okay.
So this could be something that we could revisit as well. We have opted in for all of our services for the Bright Choice. And again, that energy savings, what we're looking at as a staff is investing that into the portfolio of energy projects that is part of our energy master plan that you're going to hear about shortly.
I think another way to look at it is this action is in front of us for a direction that we can give staff. Currently, PG&E, according to this document, is 32.8% renewable.
Mm-hmm.
Moving to Bright Choice, it's at 54.6. So part of being good stewards is going in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
You got a cost savings, and then there's an investment plan that they're trying to do to also provide the additional offset. So the decision or direction in front of us is this a step in the right direction? Part one, right? You might not get to 100% today. You could, but you may not. And the question is what is that right balance? And do we have a good plan in play? Any other questions on this side?
I mean, I have Bright Choice at home. Works pretty well. From a net metering perspective, though, they do monthly net metering, which is a pain in the ass because then you bleed during the winter and then you make it back during the summer. Do they have annual net metering? For us, or
I mean, currently under PG&E, it is annual net metering. I'm not sure what it is with Ava.
right?
Because we can get back to that.
I have annual for PG&E, but the Ava part is monthly. So I bleed funds during the winter when my solar's not doing
Sometimes you pay
well,
more, sometimes you
and then I make it back in the summer. I just from a cash flow perspective, I'm just curious.
Are you also worried from an administrative perspective as well, or
Just cash flow. I mean,
just cash flow?
I hate to give them money and then get it back later.
If I could just make one more comment, and appreciate your comment, Arun, on the different comparisons. So when we look at Bright Choice and we're looking at 54.6 eligible renewable energy, but then we look at renewable 100 is 100%. So I guess the difference there is close to like 46, 45 and 0.4 or whatever, percent. I guess that percentage benefit, and then looking at the 150 or $175,000 savings, like which one outweighs the other? Because we're going to take that 175, invest it somewhere else. Is that going to be a better use of our resources, or is it in our money, or is it going to be going with the renewable 100? So I would just ask if the staff can look into that a little bit more and be able to weigh the pros and cons.
It'll probably go into the cogen project, right? Yeah.
And I think
Which is the big, the big kahuna. That's the big one.
I think part of the other thing is we're not going to have a full 175 in our control because we have partner agencies.
True.
So it's going to be
Yeah.
a lower amount.
But then we'll have to apportion that too with, right? I mean, with this too, because we're not going to see.
Well, the cogen's all our facility, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? None?
I'll move staff recommendation.
Does this require an action? Seems like it was just to provide direction.
It does not require a formal action.
Okay.
Unless our general counsel.
Make it so.
Do we want to? Should we entertain the motion since it came forward, or?
I don't think there's any need.
With that, just checking if there's any public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8B. receive a presentation on implementation of the Energy Facilities Master Plan CIP 22-P009. Staff.
Good evening, President Gwell, members of the board. I'm Steve Delight, the Engineering Services Director. As you may recall, the Energy Master Plan proposed many projects, and at the time, staff said that during the CIP update process, that we would rebalance the CIP to accommodate both staffing and funding. We have been working, Jason and his team have been working very diligently on trying to figure everything out, and Jason is here tonight to step through the CIP as it stands now, which is also a preview of what you'll see in the upcoming months. Jason?
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, President Goel, members of the board. My name is Jason Ching, Senior Engineer in the Capital Projects Division. As Steve indicated, I'm here this evening to provide an overview of the fiscal implications of the recommendations from the Energy Facilities Master Plan. We're going to provide some recommendations tonight, but we're going to go over a lot of slides with a lot of pictures, and if there's any questions throughout my presentation, feel free to stop me. So the agenda tonight, we're going to have a quick overview of the Energy Facilities Master Plan. The last time I was here, it was in January 2024. So we'll just kind of have a quick recap of the Energy Facilities Master Plan and the recommendations from it. We'll go, majority of the presentation this evening is to discuss the fiscal implications and the preliminary analyses of the capital funds that will be impacted by those 14 projects. And then finally, we'll provide recommendations on how to fund these Energy Master Plan projects. So again, as I mentioned, I'm going to have a quick overview. We've seen this slide in the past. This was an all-encompassing review of all the district facilities. We started this project in early 2022. We concluded this project in late 2023. We presented some of the preliminary findings of the Energy Facilities Master Plan in January of 2024. The board subsequently adopted an energy policy in February of 2024. The Energy Master Plan recommends 17 projects, 3 of which are quote-unquote non-CIP projects and 14 capital improvement projects. So here on this slide are those 14 capital projects. They kind of fall within 4 different categories: regulatory compliance, renewable energy generation, and energy diversification, asset replacement, and electrical resiliency and reliability. And those are the 14 projects. Some of these projects, I'll note, are already in our current CIP. We added some projects after the findings of report to the board in January 2024. The second thing I'll note is that really 3 of these categories are what we'd consider non-discretionary, right? These are, if you look at regulatory compliance, those are projects we would do no matter what, right? Same thing with asset replacement. As our assets age, we'd replace them. And anything to do with resiliency and reliability as far as the electrical systems would likely be projects we would carry forward regardless of the recommendations from the Energy Master Plan. So really that upper right-hand right square there, the renewable energy generation and energy diversification box, so to speak, is really the discretionary part of the Energy Master Plan. We'll go over some of the high-level fiscal implications. These are things I shared with the board in January 2024, but we'll do a quick overview here. This slide shows how it's about $123.7 million energy CIP. And you can see how it's broken down by those 4 categories. $84 million in asset replacement, $11.8 million in regulatory compliance, $8.3 million in energy resiliency, and about $20 million in renewable energy generation and diversification projects. And as I noted, those first 3 categories, asset replacement, regulatory compliance, and energy resiliency projects would be must-dos, if you will. And really, it's the last category that is discretionary. That's about $20 million. That includes some of the solar projects that we're already initiating. This $19.6 million assumes that 2 solar projects will be funded through a purchase power agreement. And following my presentation, Steve Delight will provide some more details about some of our work on the solar projects, including the PPAs. This slide shows how the energy, total energy CIP affects the capital funds. So in short, it affects 4 capital funds. Funds 210, which is the local wastewater replacement fund. Fund 310, the regional wastewater replacement fund. Fund 320, the wastewater expansion fund. And Fund 610, the water replacement fund. And as you can see, the biggest impacts are in Fund 310 and 320 with potential, 81.4 million and $33.9 million respectively. Now, as I mentioned, many of these projects, a good portion of these projects are part of our existing CIP. So this slide shows how much more we will add to the existing funds. So this slide basically is summarizing that we're going to be adding about $1.6 million to Fund 210, $45 million to 310, $23.4 million to 320, and $4 million to 610. So again, just like the last slide, the biggest impacts are to funds 310 and 320. In total, we will be adding about $74 million to the total CIP.
Quick
Yes.
question. Is there a overlay on which ones are tied, or which one is tied to the 19.6, the renewable? There's no direct relation, is there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I can give a quick summary. Some of these projects are related, like solar projects. They're going to be, there's an off-site solar project and there's an on-site solar project. The on-site solar project will affect all of our funds, whereas the off-site, it's mostly, it will be all 300. So in short, I can't give you those details. It's not one size fits all, but to summarize it, it sort of impacts all our funds. But the majority, I would say, does affect 310 and 320. Food waste being an example of affecting directly the wastewater treatment plant. Of course. Now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff here. And really take a look at how these added projects would impact the health of the capital funds. So I'd like to spend a few moments here to talk about our background and approach. And so what we've done at this go around, we didn't really look at our existing CIP, our current CIP. We started work on our upcoming CIP. So we looked at what our current projects are that we need to carry forward. We also looked at what new projects we need to add to the next CIP, and then we also folded in the new energy projects and kind of projected what our working capital balance will look like between 2026 and 2035, which is the next 10-year period. The impact, as I mentioned, there are 4 capital funds that will be impacted: 210, 310, 320, and 610. All the assumptions of what I will show you in the next few graphs will assume pay-as-you-go. So what that means is that is a financing strategy where we're using available revenue to finance those capital projects. So if you think about financing a car, right? You can pay it out of your bank account. That's basically pay-as-you-go. The opposite to that would be pay-as-you-use or debt financing. So in this situation, we are just analyzing all the capital funds based on a pay-as-you-go financing strategy. In addition, we're looking at the health of these capital funds based on the target requirements and the minimum requirements for each of these capital funds. So again, in the next few slides, you're going to see a lot of bars, a lot of lines, a lot of different colors. And so this is an example right now. So this is just the game plan as we look at all these various graphs. First, the bars represent the expected capital expenditures by year. What we've done is we've broken it down by energy projects, which are shown in green, and the blue portion represents the non-energy CIP projects. Second, you'll see a line in red, which represents our minimum reserve. In that dashed blue/purple line is our target reserve. And then finally, we will plot the working capital balance in those funds over time, which is shown in blue. So how do we assess the health, right? And in this example, I've highlighted that portion in the upper left-hand corner in green is both above the minimum reserve and the target reserve, which would be indicative of a very healthy working capital balance. in this yellow section, this middle section here, this is above the minimum reserve but below the target reserve. We would still consider this a healthy fund. However, in 2034 and 2035, you can see that balance drops below the minimum reserve, which would indicate that the health of the fund may be in jeopardy and we'd have to make adjustments. So that's just kind of a general primer of how we're going to look at these funds. So let's start off with the first fund. This is Fund 210. We are projecting about expected CIP of $23.6 million. Of that, $2.4 million in energy projects, a total of $1.6 million increase to the CIP. You can see, again, the capital expenditures in the bars down on the x-axis. Here are the minimum and target reserves and the working capital balance through 2035. You can see that working capital balance remains above both the minimum and target reserve very easily. So we consider this the health of this fund in very good shape and has very capable of absorbing those additional costs. I'm skipping Fund 310 for a sec, and I will go into Fund 320, which is our Regional Wastewater Expansion Fund. Total CIP of about $145.1 million, of which $33.9 million are energy projects. We're anticipating a net increase of $23.4 million to Fund 320. Most of those projects are going to be in the future, which isn't necessarily reflected in this graph. But here you are with the minimum and target reserves. Again, through 2035, you can see our working capital balance remains above the target and minimum reserves, again, in really good health. Most of those costs are in the future, and that's why you see the minimum and target reserves climb quite a bit between 2033 and 2035. Fund 610 is our water replacement fund. Again, here are capital expenditures, $196 million in our CIP, of which $6 million is our energy projects, for a total increase of about $4 million to the water fund. Our minimum and target reserves are shown here, and the working capital balance, again, is safely above the minimum and target reserves, which is indicative that this fund is very capable of absorbing those additional costs. Now we'll get into Fund 310, and most of the discussion here will be focusing on Fund 310. $217,000 is projected in the next 10-year CIP, $81.4 million of which are energy projects, for basically adding about $45 million to Fund 310. You can see, compared to the other graphs or the other bar charts, the green bars are a lot bigger compared to some of the other funds. I'm going to further break this down and highlight one project, which is the cogen project, right? The cogen replacement. Our cogen has been in operation since the early 1980s. It's provided the district reliable service for over 40 years. However, it is an aging asset, and not only does Energy Master Plan recommend replacing it sooner rather than later, staff is also in concurrence with that recommendation. And so, as you can see here, that dark green bar represents the cost for the cogen replacement project. You can see we want to start this project as soon as we can in fiscal year 26. The first couple years are for planning and design. Fiscal years 29 to 30 would represent some permitting that we're forecasting. And then the bulk of the cost, $30.9 million, which is the construction phase of that project. So that's why you see that in 2031 and 2032.
Jason, just a quick thing. So when
Sure.
you're talking about the different funds here and the net increases, are you getting at that's how much more we'll need to add to that?
Correct. If you took out these energy projects, it would be $45 million less. So that $217 million accommodates all these energy projects. Yeah. And so that, we're adding on another $45 million over the planning horizon, which is about 25 years.
Great, thank you.
Of course. So what does the working capital balance look like? It doesn't look good, in short. So the minimum and target reserves are shown here. What you can see is that the fiscal fund, Fund 310, has a lot of fiscal pressure starting in fiscal year 27 and 28, where it drops below the minimum reserve. It recovers slightly in 29 and 30, But then when we begin construction of the cogen replacement project, it drops again below the minimum reserve. And in fact, of greater concern, it goes into the negative territory beginning in fiscal years 32 and beyond. So staff looked at all the alternatives and how we could improve the health, specifically of Fund 310. Before I get into that, I thought I'd review some of the tenets of our policies. So we do have a policy that governs capital financing and debt management. There are two ways to fund capital projects, pay as you go, as I've mentioned before. I've listed, according to that policy, there are three factors that we should consider when using pay as you go. Are there funds that are available to pay for that using a pay as you go strategy? Would debt have any adverse effects on cash flow and or operating flexibility? Or are there unstable market conditions where debt financing would make it more advantageous for the district? The opposite to that is debt financing. Pay as you use is a terminology. In this case, factors that would be good candidates for debt financing is if the asset life is greater than the term of the financing, the project is needed to meet district needs, and resources are insufficient or unavailable. And third, there's a sufficiency of revenue to cover that debt service. In short, we believe the cogeneration replacement project really fits that need. We have an asset that can right now, our existing asset has lasted us 40 years. So we think it's a very good candidate for debt financing. So I flashed up again the what the working capital balance for Fund 310 looks like under a pay-as-you-go strategy. What we analyze is potentially financing the cogen replacement project during the construction phase only, and that's what's shown in this slide. That's about $30.9 million in fiscal years 31 and 32. What that we assume for this next graph, we've assumed a 30-year term at about 4.5% interest. So what that does is it spreads out that $30.9 million capital cost over 30 years at about $1.9 million per year. And that's what's shown in the purple bar. Secondarily, what this does is because we're kind of reducing the net expenditures in our capital improvement program, it also reduces the minimum and target reserves, especially on the early years. And that, once you accommodate that new debt scenario, that's what the new minimum and target reserves will look like. So this is the new graph. The bar charts assume debt financing for the cogen replacement project, specifically for the construction phase, as well as the debt service for the future years from 2031 out, along with the new minimum and target reserves. And what I show here is in the dashed blue line is what was showing as under the pay-as-you-go strategy, and the dark blue line, the solid blue line, would indicate the working capital balance with debt financing. As you can see, that solid blue line is right above the minimum reserve for most of the planning period, and within or below the target reserve. So using a debt scenario, this really restores the fiscal health of Fund 310. I will acknowledge that there is a slight dip in 2027 where it drops a little bit below the minimum reserve, but staff believes that we can still make adjustments as we develop the CIP to make sure that that number gets above our minimum reserve, including transfers and adjusting timing of certain projects. So to a quick summary, the Energy Master Plan recommends 14 capital projects totaling $123.7 million. It will add about $74 million to the current CIP. The fiscal impacts are to funds 210, 310, 320, 610, 210, 320, and 610 indicate that they are more than capable of absorbing those costs. Fund 310, however, will face fiscal challenges under a pay-as-you-go financing strategy. The cogen replacement project is the primary reason for that. However, debt financing can alleviate those fiscal pressures on Fund 310. So staff's recommendation tonight is to debt finance the cogeneration replacement project. That would begin, currently is projected in fiscal years 2031 to 2032 at about $30.9 million. with an estimated debt service of $1.9 million per year over 30 years. As far as next steps, if we will continue to refine the capital improvement program, if the board concurs with staff's recommendation tonight, we will incorporate debt financing into the capital improvement program assumptions. We will add the 14 energy-related projects as we discussed here as well. In terms of key milestones, our intent is to come back to the board in May of 2025 to present the draft CIP, and then June 2025, adopt the final CIP. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions from the board, I'd be happy to take that at this time.
Thank you, staff. We'll start off on the right side. Go ahead, Shirji.
Jason, what interest rate were you assuming when you said 1.9 million per year?
Yeah, we assumed a 30-year term at 4.5%.
If you go back 2 slides, I just need to get clear in my head the difference between the 123 and the 74. Is the later years where the other money comes in, or are you taking some projects out of the blue in order to make room for the green? Or is it both?
Yeah, so the $123 million, if you look at all the energy projects, right, it totals $123.7 million.
Okay.
The 70, now some of those projects are already in our CIP. For example, we already have a fleet asset management program. We already have the cogen projects already in our CIP. Now, the Energy Master Plan took a look at all our projects, and they said, well, maybe the timing is going to be a little different. The cost might be a little higher. And so when you take the delta between what we have in our existing CIP and the total cost of the Energy Master Plan, we're looking at adding another $74 million.
Okay, but there's nothing past 2035.
There will be additional costs in 2035. There will.
The 123 isn't spread out.
It's spread out over that entire 25-year planning period.
So you're showing.
I'm showing the.
What is the true delta that you're showing then? I guess is my question.
The true delta is $74 million.
Up until 2035.
I will call it through about 2045.
Okay.
So the way the CIP represents things in the future is it's like one big lump of future. So it's spread out over the next 10 years beyond that in one spot. It's not like they're spaced out in time up to 2050 or what am I saying that right, Jan?
I think perhaps, Jason, if you could answer the question of the 74 million, how much is in the 10-year period and how much is beyond the 10-year period?
Thank you. And I'm financing 60. I'm financing 60 is what it sounds like, right? So if I'm not, now I'm starting to feel like I'm financing all of it. If 74 is
what staff is showing is that because the 74 million is split across the funds and 3 of the 4 funds that will be impacted are healthy, we don't need to finance in those funds. The one fund that is will be under pressure and stress because of cogen is 310. So we only need to finance 30.9 million of that added 70.
Okay, so it's not 30 plus 30.
No,
it's okay.
It's most probably
correct.
23 million funded outside of the 2035.
Correct. And I'm sure if we gave Jason a little time, he could pull it. But
Okay,
yeah,
I saw 2 bars.
Yeah, of the 74 million,
there's
there's
60 and then there's 74. So okay.
the bulk of it, of the 74 million that's added to the CIP, does occur within the 10-year window.
Okay.
But there are some portions of that 74 million that will be beyond that window.
Okay. And then I guess my last question is, have we looked at what's in the blue bar in 2026 and 2027 that we could defer or not do?
Yeah, we have looked at that. That blue bar, you're right. That's a pretty significant chunk. And staff's general opinion about that is those projects should proceed in 2026. They're made up of, I can look quick. There's really 5 projects that are made up in that time period. They are made up of the SCADA project, which we're currently working on, the FLARE, which is currently in permitting, that we are trying to, the HVAC project, which is also an energy project, That is currently in process, and we expect to bid that. We actually put that out to bid today. We're trying to replace our hypo facilities at the treatment plant. That is already in a design, and we expect to put that for bids in the next couple months. And then finally, we have the electrical improvement projects. That's also an energy project. Of that, that's $17.9 million. That's about 79% of the fiscal year 26 budget there.
And I would just add that although that bar looks very high, part of the reason it's high is because there were projects that were delayed or deferred because of permitting. So and staffing. So a number of the projects are hitting at the same time. Some of those projects that Jason mentioned have been underway for several years now, and they're just nearing completion in 25 and 26.
Okay, thank you.
No, very nice presentation, Jason. Thank you. And I was just going to say, Ken, I think you're going to have to get more aggressive with the investment portfolio to help Jason out here. So that's all.
That's the plan.
Yep.
Well, as the board indicated, great presentation, great pictorials. It really told a story. I think it's empowering this board to be able to make whatever choices and decisions are forthcoming, eyes wide open, right? We're going to know exactly when we need to do debt financing out in 2031. One thing that I would say, though, in your sequence of events, as you're looking for opportunities of a shelf-ready project, is trying to optimize your delivery schedule and then give a fork in the road right before finalizing the construction documents to go out to bid to reevaluate, are we taking advantage of the timing of the bid climate? Because that might drive additional savings. I have a feeling there's going to be a bid climate change in the next 4 years. Not that I'm a fortune teller. But I think that's what we've used in other deliveries. And I think the other piece is you may want to find out opportunities for acceleration that may be tied to some environmental regulations that may have undergo some changes.
So are you asking us to make a decision of basically blessing debt financing in 2031 tonight?
Sounds like they're looking for a head nod to provide them direction that this is a sound plan
Okay.
to then come back to us with their CIP and their budget proposal. Is that?
That is correct.
Because I don't want to make that decision in a vacuum. I want to see it in conjunction with the budget proposal.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we're asking is if the board
We just wanna
concurs
make
this
sure it's
evening,
palatable and that
yes,
it feels like that's
we will
the
present
route that would be
the
most
draft
fair.
CIP document to the board for
Okay.
its consideration.
In spirit of no
based on those
surprises
assumptions.
and eyes wide open. I like that. I just
Yep.
hesitate to make one section of the budget. Okay.
Yeah, this item was for providing direction, no action by the board today.
Okay.
All right. Any additional questions, comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8C. Receive a presentation on the proposed solar energy project, CIP 24A045 and CIP 24A046. Staff.
Good evening. I'm here for the third and final presentation tonight around energy, and it's an update on the solar projects. This click works far enough away. All right, tonight I'm going to give an update on the solar projects that staff has been working on. I'm at the conclusion of the Energy Master Plan. 2 solar projects were added to the CIP to get started. They were accelerated to pave the way for future electric vehicle charging stations so we could be ready for upcoming fleet regulations. To assist in that effort, the district hired ARC Alternatives to complete a detailed analysis and also to help us in writing RFPs for final projects. Based on their modeling and conservative estimates over a 20-year project life, the net benefit for the district is expected to be approximately $6.5 million through a PPA. A PPA is a power purchase agreement where we enter into a third-party agreement with a company that builds, owns, and maintains the solar infrastructure. The agreement would be for a set price for electricity over the life of the contract. So the utility analysis. The 4 sites that the district operates that show the greatest potential for solar development is here the district office, the field operations facility, the wastewater treatment plant, and LAVMA. During the evaluation period, all the analysis data was based on 2023 use patterns. Over that period, the district consumed over 13 million kilowatt hours of electricity over those sites. The treatment plant in LAVMA accounted for over 95% of that consumption, which is also represented graphically on this slide. The green color is the wastewater treatment plant, and the blue color is LAVMA. As you can see, district office and FOF are very small chunks. ARC developed preliminary layouts for each site with the goal of maximizing the solar capacity while conforming with the existing space constraints. The district office and the FOF were able to not offset nearly all power consumed on site, again, based on that past data. The treatment plant and LAVMA have low energy use offsets because they consume large amounts of energy where there's not sufficient space for large solar systems. As you can see on the table, across all sites, we can offset a rough approximately 21% of of the energy consumed, with nearly 100% at the district office and FOF, but 18% at the other 2 sites. Next few slides, I'm going to talk about very preliminary layouts at each location. So the district office would be looking at about 150 kilowatt size system. It would be, the panels are proposed to be on the roof and over a new carport parking structure on the north side of the building. In order to facilitate construction of the parking structure, a couple of the trees in the back would need to move out of the way in order for the solar panels to be there. Pretty straightforward, like what goes on office buildings all around town. Very similar layout over at FOF, slightly larger system at about 170 kW. Panels would be proposed, some on the roof of the building, that if you can see, that's the blue squares, and then in the parking lot area there, that structure would cover about half of the area where the field operations trucks park, and then the other half is over the parking lot, you know, where the employees park, or if there's a visitor, where they would park. Again, a couple of trees would have to be removed at this site in order to make way for the solar panels. Wastewater treatment plant. Continuing to get larger with the sizes. This is a approximately 450 kW solar array. Most of the panels would be on new structures that cover the parking areas. A few panels would be installed on existing buildings. This one here, a couple of trees would also need to be removed sort of along the entrance road. These are not trees that are along the fence in the border. These are there's like 3 trees along the holding basin. They're not part of the overall landscaping. They're just there, but those would likely need to be removed in order to make way for the solar panels. All right, next one up is LAVMA, and I'm going to focus a fair amount of time on LAVMA. LAVMA is located within an easement on DSRSD property that is adjacent to the facultative sludge lagoon dedicated land disposal site, and it's also just south of our FOF building. This would be a roughly 1,000 kilowatt solar array. Most of the panels are on new structures on the northwest and south side. In order to make way for the solar panels, many trees would need to be removed. As a part of this project, CEQA would likely be needed because it would be a visual impact, and depending on the CEQA results, the feasibility or size of the project could be impacted, and perhaps the solar array could end up smaller. And I got a couple of pictures here. So these are existing trees and shrubs from what it looks like now, because in the previous picture, the parking, or where Costco was dirt. now the parking lot's there. So these are the existing trees and shrubs kind of in the parking lot looking east towards Lavma, kind of northeast. And this one here on the right is kind of looking a little bit to the south and east. But as you can see, there's quite a few trees there that are living on this berm. The solar panels would likely be oriented to the south, so they would be, you'd kind of see through them, and you'd be able to see through the site. And then this next slide is photos that were taken from the inside of Lavma, looking out towards Costco, kind of in the same two vantage points. So that's looking north and west, and kind of south and east. And the lights kind of got it washed out a little bit, but if you can kind of see in the hole in the trees above the orange cones, you can see like the red from the Costco sign. So again, there's a berm. It somewhat screens the facility with a lot of trees on it, and we will need to go through that process. The next thing to point out about Lavma that is a little bit interesting is the use pattern for Lavma is different than all of our other sites. All of our other sites kind of use a constant amount of power. The treatment plant, of course, uses more during the summer when recycled water production is going on, but the rest of the sites kind of use about the same amount of power all the time. Here at Lavma, if you're looking at the graph here on the screen, the dark blue is the current Lavma load profile, which changes. I'm sure the load profile at this exact moment is a little bit higher because there's a storm going on. Also during the wintertime, there's much less recycled water production, so there is more water going to Lavma that needs to be pushed over to Ebda over the hill. Less solar power is generated, so the green curves is the solar panel that would be estimated to be generated, and then actually the light blue on the bottom is predicted amounts of power that would be able to be sold back to the grid. As you can see, almost all power produced at Lavma is during the summertime. Almost everything would be exported during the summertime because of the recycled water demands and recycled water that's being created at the plant. There's not much for Lavma to pump. Unfortunately, under the NEM 3 rules, you can sell power back, but it's not as advantageous as it was under previous rules. However, you're still making money. You're still selling power back to the grid. So RESPECT. This is a fun one to say. I'm going to definitely have to read this. PG&E's Renewable Energy Self-Generation Bill Credit Transfer Program. If you want me to repeat that, I can. 3 times. 3 times. Also known as RESPECT. It allows local government to generate power at one location and receive credits at another location. So we could generate it at Lavma, let's say, and use it at the wastewater treatment plant, or use it at one of the water pump stations, or use it here, something. At another location that is, also controlled by the same entity. The Lavma board has been very interested in solar at the site, and due to the RESPECT program, the district wanted to evaluate to see if it was feasible for power generated there to be used at other district facilities. Unfortunately, the program is currently at capacity, which can only be adjusted through state legislation. So because of that, it's unlikely that the district would be able to participate in the RESPECT program for the Lavma site. Therefore, staff is recommending that to install solar at Lavma in partnership with Lavma. Right now, the district currently manages and pays and bills Lavma for the power, and each year there's like an annual adjustment where again based on volume and flow, it's divvied up. So whatever the savings is would be spread among the Lavma agencies, and it would be reflected in the operating expenses at the end of the year. So back to some quick jump through the financial modeling results. So a reminder, the PPA, the district would not own the solar panels directly. They'd be owned by a vendor. We would pay the vendor on a set fixed rate, and the solar vendor is liable for maintaining the system, and they're only being paid for the energy that is produced. So there's quite the incentive to make sure that the solar panels are up and running, because they're only going to get paid for what they sell to us. Assumptions: 20-year life of the project with a 3.5% annual utility rate escalation. Solar panels degrade at 0.5% per year, and the assumed cost when the study was completed was 21 cents a kilowatt hour. So again, the estimated net benefit for the district under 20 years with the PPA, with all of those estimates, is about $6.5 million. So based on these assumptions, in year one, the actual net benefit is already positive of about $60,000. Towards the end, it's almost $600,000 a year. However, each site varies. If you look at the table on the screen, Lavma is a little lower than the plant, even with the larger solar installation. This is due to the usage patterns and, you know, the power being sold back during the summer under the NEM 3. During the summer is when the most power would be produced. And again, Resbect is unlikely to be something that we could participate in. So recommendations. Staff recommends that, again, kind of looking for a head nod, to release a solar RFP to solar PPA providers for implementation of the solar systems at all sites, and to partner with LAVMA to further evaluate solar installation and to potentially minimize tree removal along the west fence. If the board concurs, and we were to proceed with these projects, the solar installations would be estimated to be completed in around 18 months or so. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for a great presentation. Very informative. Start on the left-hand side. Any questions?
Nice presentation, Steve. Just a quick clarification. So when we were looking at the table, where it's a parameter type and value for the district office, and then it showed the field operations facility. When you look at those tables, they look pretty similar, you know, and with the numbers. I mean, plus or minus.
As far as the benefit?
Yes.
Yeah.
However, when you look at the PPA net benefit, the field operations facility is significantly larger. So I'm just kind of curious on why there's that discrepancy or such a variation from one to the other. So if you look at that, it's like, it's almost like 4 times, right?
Yeah, so the difference between that slide at 610 and then I think you mean in this one back here.
Yeah, right there. Right.
Yep.
Not that one, the next one. So if you're keep going, I'm sorry.
Well, I think it was, yeah, this one or not this one.
No, it's the one with the layouts. The layouts. Yep. So right there, yeah. So this one, and if you compare the one previous to this,
302 modules at FOF, 270 at the district office. So why is the module count so much?
Well, they're almost, plus or minus. It just doesn't seem like.
3 times.
It doesn't seem as 3 times. Yeah, that's that. I just was curious why there's that discrepancy there.
Does it have to do with the tilt factor? One's 30 degrees versus 7, and so it's the total optimized calculation of projection.
You're probably correct there. I can get back to you on that because I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, great. That's probably
your
correct,
optimal calculation is going to be based on a 90-degree penetration off the solar panel.
Yeah.
So if you're at a 30-degree tilt, you're not going to have optimal.
And the other one was a 7-degree.
7-degree has a better chance.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and also like knowing the way this building is, all of the solar panels on the right are going to be facing towards the east, so they're not going to get as much sun in the afternoon. Whereas almost all of the solar panels here are going to be oriented in the right direction or in a better direction.
But if you look at so let's say, I'm not sure if I still understand with the tilt, because the estimated annual solar generation is still about the same, right? I mean, pretty much even with the degree tilt on each one.
Again, I can get back to you on that because the other explanation is that building is staffed totally different than this building.
Sure.
The majority of the people that work there are not there. They're out in the field, where this building people are here, all the time.
So you're thinking the consumption will be greater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Again, because it's based on, the usage pattern from 2023. So.
Right. I like this nice summary at the very end. I think you were probably all reading my mind that I'd ask for a table like this. So thank you for a very nice presentation. Great slides.
Director Halkett, any questions? Moving on to, go ahead, Director.
I just have one quick question. Do you know Pleasant Heritage Tree Ordinance?
I am very certain they have a heritage tree ordinance. I don't know which trees they exactly cover. And I don't even, to be honest, I don't even know what kind of trees those are along Lavma.
I think well, not the same comparison. The city of Dublin's has only to do with the circumference.
It's
So
part
it's
of what we
something
need
you'll
to
have to do.
investigate to figure out.
Okay.
Yes.
Generally 36 inches or greater.
I'm sure they pulled down a bunch of trees to build the Costco, didn't they?
I'm not going to go there.
I'm sure they pulled down a bunch of trees to build the Costco. I don't know why. I don't know. I did have
No,
one.
because Clorox was there. No trees.
There were a lot of trees along the road.
There were no trees around the Costco. Dang, okay, so I thought we could leverage that. Is the issue with the trees more because of privacy, or is the issue of the trees because of the environmental CEQA heritage, blah blah blah? I'm wondering if the problem could just be solved with fencing.
It could be both. Yes, that's what I'm saying. We need to really jump into it on like a full site assessment of what it really is there. Because yes, there's a berm there, and the fence could maybe be adjusted. The solar panels would probably create some amount of screening.
You don't want them too high because then you'll lose your effectiveness of the solar panels because they're providing shade.
But that wouldn't be something that the solar provider would provide. We would be left holding the bag around the tree removal and around probably the putting in any fencing or visual mitigation and maintaining that landscaping. Correct?
As far as the way the RFP is written, we could probably add it into the contract for them to take care of the tree removal. But if there was any like adding in other landscaping along that border, we would have to take care of that in the future.
Yeah, I guess just the point I'm trying to make is that if the benefit for the solar is going to be shared, the cost, the mitigation, putting the CEQA together, putting the fence up or whatever should also be shared. And my gut impression as you were talking was it was more trouble than it was worth. So I was pleased to see the numbers at the end because I know a lot of people are very interested in it. But it's almost like there's like this heavy sigh when you talk about it. It feels like the llama thing is just a square peg in a round hole. And I'm trusting your engineering guidance that we're not just chasing a rabbit for political reasons, that there truly is value in the project. I'd rather you speak now and let us know, just not worth it. But it sounded like from the numbers on the last slide that it was worth it, even though it was seasonal and we had to do all this other stuff. And I'm just trying to peel the onion back a little bit. I
think what staff's recommendation is based on the feasibility study. We think it's worth further looking at. Part of the tree, why we want to look at the trees are, in general, historically, the neighborhood has been sensitive to shrubs and trees removal. So this is just something that we want to take a closer look at before we go out and put out an RFP that just removes all these trees. So we just, this was a feasibility analysis provided by a consultant who put solar layouts together, and now we need to take a deeper look at it and also talk to LAVMA to see about their interest in the LAVMA board after they review these numbers to see if they're interested in partnering with the district on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think some of my comments are going to kind of mimic, but maybe go into a little deeper. I'm looking at 18% offset and then predominant energy created or produced during summer, and then the ability to truly recover that cost is a moving target. So although we are depicting a net position of positive, it truly could be something different as the energy landscape changes. That's part one. Part two is I would suspect a good move on our part if we were to go remove X% of trees is to have a multiplier of replacement. And in the case of the fence line, get in front of it, if the choice and the will of the boards may be to move forward, is to kind of create some natural vegetation screening elements along that fence line as part of that original proposal. And so, I'm just kind of looking at it as a fair feedback on feedback I've received from other projects. So just keep that in mind as you embark on that. I do know we have a member of the public that may wish to address this board. Is that a fair statement, or? Jeez. Levi Fuller from Lobma.
Evening, members of the board. First of all, I just want to thank DSRSD staff for putting the presentation together and getting me up to speed on the solar projects for the district in general, since I'm a historical employee of DSRSD and LAVMA specifically as the general manager. So I will be plagiarizing much of this presentation and taking it to the LAVMA board in a couple of weeks and get reaction from the LAVMA board to see what direction they have. I will just say as a personal comment that it seems like to me it is worth DSRSD continuing to explore this project and partnering with LAVMA and DSRSD. So that would be my personal feeling at this point, but I'll get feedback from the board and a LAVMA board in a couple of weeks. So.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. So I know one of the items is to provide direction, not an action, to staff. One of my thoughts on some direction is if we were to proceed down the path of an RFP is to make sure that your RFP is such that you can go site A, B, C, or D and be optional.
All or nothing.
Yeah. And then that it come back as part of their proposal, their energy projection offset. And so you almost use your guys' ARC presentation as a third-party evaluation because a lot of the solar generation software to do the projections and calculations, tilt variations, will come back with different answers. The other thing that you may want to do is focus on particular types and brands of solar panels, along with the percentage of return on it. There are certain panels that provide a higher level of energy creation for the footprint size and panel size. And they also have a longer warranty panel as well, which may offset some maintenance costs that can be recognized as part of that proposal. So providing some loose language and direction that kind of lead the proposers maybe where you want to land, or even provide some additional optimization. So in your proposal, I assume you're going to say a typical type of layout could and may be like this. However, the proposer is entitled to provide their feedback of best fit solutions up to and including alternative placement and design. Just some of my...
Yeah, it's a PPA, so it's not like, basically we're signing up for a fixed rate for power. So you have the slide with the sell back during the summer is moot because the vendor we're going to choose reaps that benefit. They reap the tax benefits as well. So basically, get the best rate you can. And
Yes.
I don't like PPAs to be honest with you. I was in this business for many years. I get the fact that we don't want to spend our own capital on this, but PPA, we're just basically locking in a rate.
And those rates are based on assumptions of that provider making money.
Yeah,
So
that's on their side of the fence, though.
correct, but we can encourage them to look at that, right? And it's going to behoove them to look in the right direction because in an RFP, the best value would be presented forward, which has the best overall market position for us as well. I would assume.
I mean, they're going to try to pay us as little as they're going to try to charge us the most they can.
But an RFP changes that arena because if you get three qualified bidders,
Get 3 bidders, and
right?
we'll see.
Theoretically, and theoretically, we could get some different economics.
Yep.
Theoretically.
But the bottom line is, we're locking in a rate that's supposedly less than PG&E for 20 years.
So, are you suggesting that maybe part of the proposal come back with a buyout arrangement?
No. I mean, PPA makes sense. I mean, we don't want to fund this ourselves, and we don't want to own a solar array. Those are a pain in the ass. Right. I'm just saying it's get the best rate we can. It's up to them to figure out whether they want to go fixed tilt or go
Adjustable.
trackers or whatever. That's on them. Just get the best rate we can and spike the ball and call it a day.
Okay. Do we have head nods? To provide direction? Sufficient direction? All right. No further comments? All right, moving on to item 9, reports. We'll go to item 9A. We'll handle it in 2 sequences. The first one is going to be board items, the Joint Power Authority and Committee reports. I believe there was a DERWA meeting. A report out. Not all
The
at
Durham
once.
meeting consisted mostly of us rotating officers, thanking Georgine for her excellent service. Consent items only. There was no new board business or anything that we need to bring back to you at this time.
Yeah, it was a very short meeting. We told the poor attorney who drove down from Sacramento for our 12-minute meeting that he could call in next time. Part of why we even had the meeting is I've asked Vivian to make sure that we have a quarterly meeting so everybody has a schedule and they're aware of when the meetings are. Also, that will make the 2 Central Sand people a little bit more comfortable. Central Sand. Yeah, right. A little bit more comfortable with the things we're doing because they have a lot of questions since both of them are new to DERWA. So that's why. Poor guy drove down from Sacramento, though. Yes, I received this wonderful thing that looks like diamonds. It's a beautifully engraved pin, but I find the case amazing because it's got lights in it.
Pretty.
And it goes with the Nicole journal I got 4 years ago for serving as president. But I think that's about all we did, huh?
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. And then we'll go on to written reports. Written reports are due this evening. Does anyone have any days of service? Director Von Leopold.
I attended the CASA convention as well as the CASA board meeting last week. On Wednesday, I elected to go on the tour. The tour this time was of the Sterling Natural Resource Center in San Bernardino, and it's a complete. Well, it's actually a wastewater treatment plant, as we know the name, but of course you can see they're changing the name, yes, so that it's more pleasing. But what I found, and I wanted to make sure we gave this to our PR people. This was their handout about it is a park as well as an amphitheater because the facility is completely covered. You can stand right next to the clarifiers or whatever, and you cannot tell you're at a wastewater treatment plant. So they've built a park. They're next door to a high school, so they have a lot of intern programs going on. because they need to convince people they need to be in the wastewater industry. It was very, very interesting. And of course, then I got my free gift with the glass bottle. But the conference itself was good. There were a couple of presentations that were very technical this time, and I must admit to being a little bit lost. But the CASA board meeting, what did we do? Oh, well, we're still dealing with, and I'm sure Jan's running into it with our water partners. We're still dealing with all the negative publicity around the PFAS. It's amazing at how many places have picked up the articles, and of course they're completely in error. And one nice thing, I don't know if anybody noticed yesterday, but Contra Costa County, Santa Clara County has decided to file a lawsuit against DuPont, 3M, and one other because somebody's finally getting to the source and recognizing that's a problem. But as we know, it's not like you can spread fairy dust and make it all go away. It's going to be a major problem. Next year, it was really obvious this year that we had outgrown the facility. For the first time, they had to put a max on it, and it was crowded. There's absolutely no doubt about it that we've outgrown, which is wonderful for CASA. We've completely outgrown the facility. We had 325 max, but we actually had 329 people. But anyway, we decided on all of our conventions. These are the ones that are contracted for the next 2 years. And it's where they're at and the dates, so you can...
For CASA.
Yeah, for CASA. So that you can put them, on your vacation list or whatever. I think that's it. Yeah, there's several things going on. As some of you know, Greg Kester retired. The luncheon was in his honor. I met the lady that's taking over the position, and I think she'll do a really good job. She sounds like she's well aware. Of course, no one will ever have the kind of connections that Greg has, but he's not going anywhere. He's going to stick around and help because he wants to see this PFAS issue through. So that's it.
Thank you, Director Von Heater-Leopold. Anyone else have any? Okay. Moving on to any additional items to be placed on future agenda. Anybody? Seeing none. Staff report, item 9B.
2 quick updates. The next LAVMA board meeting is on February 19th, and the CASA DC Policy Forum is February 24th through 26th.
All right. With that, the meeting is adjourned at 7:20. Have a great evening.